Hello! Welcome to activity 2 for time. I was daydreaming looking out the window. I get to see water when I look out of the window. So we're going to think in this activity about time, how we spend our time. That was a few seconds just spent looking out of the window. So how do we spend our time? What I'd like you to do is to reflect on your time usage. So we're going to take time is in some ways how we chop up time is somewhat arbitrary. I don't want to say that too loudly around a scientist because I'm sure there are some metrics of why seconds are as they are. But we're going to take a week. A week is a relatively arbitrary, how a day is, we get a sense of a day, but 7 days, how we should cut up our week is fairly arbitrary. But let's just take a week, 168 hours. Sometimes this is known as 168 hours activity. 168 hours, we all have them. Everybody has the same amount of time. So when we sit there and say, gosh, how do you get so much done? They've been given exactly the same amount of time. So the 168 hours a week activity, what does that involve? Well, we're going to do something with it. We're going to reflect on our 168 hours a week, but then we're going to try and share a file that reflects some of that. And sometimes this can be quite illuminating, thinking about how you actually spend our time, and hopefully we'll understand each other and how we spend our time, the demands that we have on our time, and appreciate that sometimes one of the good things about this activity is you realise that I think my week is similar to other people's sorts of weeks, and I don't understand why they might not do certain things. But actually when I look at how other people spend their weeks, and I realise they have a very different demands on their time, different sorts of ways of spending their time. So this will hopefully give you a bit more insight, appreciation of the demands that people have on their time and how people choose to spend their time. So what you're going to do in this activity is we're going to open an Excel. So the first activity opened a Word document and we worked on it. This time we're going to open an Excel document from within Teams, and we're going to start adding things into there. So what we're going to do is try and share collectively what are the things that take up our time. And then we're also going to share each member of the team, and we're going to put down how much time we spend on those activities. So we put sleep, for example, and I might say I sleep a nice 8 hours a day, and then I put 8 hours, and I'll times that by 7 days, and I'll put my time on there. And other people might kind of say, actually, I get 5 hours because I go to bed late and I get up early, and then I times that by 7 and I put my time on there, and etc, etc. Or I kind of the weekend I might get 12 hours. That'd be crazy to get 12 hours sleep, but you get the idea. So you work out how much each of you spend on those activities and put those in. Work out how you spend your 168 hours. Can be illuminating. Try and think about it. What you often might end up is thinking about, well, where does it all go? So just try and really think through an average week. And we're talking about an average week. Now, some weeks, obviously, you're going to have more time spent doing this. Last week, you may not have been spending time doing Teams activities. So we just want to think a sort of average week is what we want to do. Try to include everything because there'll be gaps if you don't, but not too much detail. So eating, that's fine. That's a kind of nice granular level of detail. Not I spend 37 minutes eating crisps. I spend 3.5 minutes eating apples. I spend 27 minutes drinking cups of tea. That's too much detail. Eating as a general activity, so you're going to have to make some judgment calls about the difference between kind of levels of granularity. So think about what do you do on an average week, and how much time you spend on that. You might want to start thinking about your average day, and then think what days are like that day, and maybe the weekends are different, or maybe days on a Monday and a Wednesday you work in the evening, so that looks a bit different, or whatever it might be. So think about your days. That might help you, and remember you might want to have a calculator for working it out approximately across a week, because we're interested in the figures over the week. Some variations. Why not add a sum at the bottom of each person, so then you can see whether you've added up to 168 hours. And then if we're going to do a row, why not we add an average calculation for each item, so you can see how much on average does our team sleep over the week, how much on average does our team eat, how much on average does our team go to the toilet, how much on average does our team, etc, etc, spend time going shopping. You get the idea, and then you'll see the variation, you'll see on average. You might want to set up an ideal week and think about how you ideally set up your time. So again, in your Excel spreadsheet, you can do that. Traps. Things to avoid. Try not to be influenced by others. Just because you spend 8 hours a night and then everybody else spends 5 hours a night or 6 hours a night, don't think, oh, I probably spend too much, I should cut that back a bit. It's fine. This is all about feeling psychologically safe. This is about sharing. This is about talking. It's not about making judgments. It is okay also if someone says, I spend this time, I go out for a run every morning and I do a 10k run 3 times a week and that takes up an hour every time I do it, so I'm going to be spending all this much time exercising. It's okay not to do the things that other people do. Try not to judge yourself or others. If they say I spend all the time watching Netflix binging, that's maybe fine too. Don't just judge them. So try to be open and supportive and understanding and appreciative and all of those good qualities in your team. This is just to try and think about how do we, can we accurately spend our time, kind of judge how we're spending our time. Just thinking about our time use going forward. So let's just have a little look what that might look like in Teams. So if I, there's my other activities. So if we go back to our Teams. So you should know how to come into Teams. If my computer works for me. You come into your team, should look like this. The general channels tells you where you should be. So this time I'm going to go into this team because I have not been in this team. But let's just assume this is your team. So you come into this team. In fact, we could do in the last team. So in files, in the last activity in this workshop, we set up a document. So this one, we're going to set up an Excel workbook. And I'm going to call this 168 for the 168 hours we have in the week. So this is now shared with everybody. And I'm not going to go through all the details because in the last activity, we did a shared document. Lots of the things are the same. I'll go through quickly on those. So you might want to try and think about so you might want to think about activities down the side and then people across the top. So then we might have Paul, Mark, Luke, John, Adele, and whoever else might be in the team. My mind goes blank at this point. Billie Eilish. Right, okay, so we're going to have a number of people across the side. So the activities might be eating, sleeping, washing, going to the toilet, etc., etc. Try and think about those activities, and I might say, well, actually, if I did 5 hours a night for 7 nights, my sleeping will be 35 hours, but Mike might get more than me, so he's put 48 hours. Luke gets 52. John works nights and gets very little sleep, and so gets 34 hours a week. So you get the idea. And we could, as I said, if you want to, add a sum at the end of here for all of these people, and then you'll get the total amount. Sorry, I wanted an average there, didn't I? So let's change that from sum to, is it average? Is that how we're going to work in Excel? There we are. The average amount across that time. And so then if you want to say how much Paul spends his time doing, so if I just put in some arbitrary numbers here, just throwing them in there, what I can do here is now put a sum for this whole column, when we've got all the long list, of course. And then, I haven't finished, so I need to think about some other things that I'm doing this. So we need to be adding some columns as we go through. So you get the idea. Set up a spreadsheet. You learn how to set up a spreadsheet and share this. You can put some information in there, and this will just be some reflections on how you spend your week. So have a chat around it. Again, you can always have a conversation related to this document. You might want to think about trying to write a list of all the things first of all before you start populating that, because you want to get a full long list. You can put a conversation so we can say, wow, 8 hours sleep a night. And remember that sits there, and that also exists in your main channel, in not your main group's channel, as a post, so you can see the things that we're posting and what they're related to. So that keeps it linked to that document. Everybody can work on it. You can open it up in an app and work on it, and it will sync to that. I can make specific comments about particular things if I wanted to. So if I wanted to make a comment about that in the same way on a Word, I could make a new comment about this. This is the meme for the group. and then that becomes a comment about that particular thing. So you can see how you begin to work on shared documents. And so if we were doing this what's known as asynchronously, so some people were working on others at different times, you could come back in and see the conversations that have been had about this. You can see what's happened and what's changed, and you can see who's been making the conversations, who's been adding comments. So it's a great way to work on documents together within Microsoft Teams. And this activity is thinking about just time in a classic 168 hours a week. What do we do with it all? Where does the time go? So good luck with that. I hope you learn how to do a shared document, play around with it, think about how you spend your time, try and work out where the time goes, maybe reflect going forward how you'd ideally like to spend your time, maybe go back to this when you've done some weeks in your university course and say, how am I spending my time now? What is taken up in terms of lectures, tutorials, seminars? How much time should I be spending for my prep work? How much time should I be spending for my assessment work on an average week? And then I can say, how much time have I got for doing these other things that I want to do? So you might come back to this and use it as a framework for thinking about your time going forward. So just some ideas there. Good luck with the activity. Hope you have some good learning.